He looks like he owns credit. Oh my gosh. Man like Arthur from Batman.
Dzień dobry, assalamu alaikum, ciao konnichiwa, bonjour, hola, ciao privet. Good morning, good morning, good morning. This is Ken at 10. Big news today. The Renters Reform Act is the news. Michael Gove has said that they'll be announcing it next week. Now, this is huge for the private rental sector. It'll be the biggest change to the housing market since the late 80s with the last Rent Act. And since then, that is the short hold tenancies creation. And since then, the housing market has gone on a pace in so many ways. But the big news is he's announcing the Renters Reform Act next week. Now, lots of landlords have asked me what this means. Will it be the end of the world? It won't be the end of the world, but it will make things a little bit tougher on landlords for many reasons. Let me read you what the website, the Gov website, says about what they'll do, and then I'll try and interpret what it means. Number one, we'll deliver on our levelling up housing mission to halve the number of non-decent rented homes by 2030 and require privately rented homes to meet the decent home standard for the first time. They're saying this will remove the blight of poor quality homes, which is great. Love that. The only problem is some of those quality homes or poor quality homes won't be replaced and they'll be withdrawn from the market. I'd love it if they had something to replace it with, but they don't. Number two, we'll accelerate quality improvements in areas. They'll do this by running pilot schemes with councils and explore different ways of enforcing standards. Basically, again, it's all about enforcement of the decent home standard. But again, really, it's a lot of hot air in my view. There's nothing in that sentence whatsoever. Number three, and this is quite a big one, the Section 21, we will deliver on our manifesto commitment to abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions and deliver a simpler, more secure tenancy structure. What they're talking about here is open-ended tenancy. So when you sign a tenancy agreement with a tenant, that tenancy agreement will be open-ended, meaning that there will be no end date. And there will be certain grounds which you can use for possession. And you have to have a valid ground for possession, of course. It's saying that it's empowering tenants to challenge poor practice and reducing costs associated with unexpected move. I'm not sure it does that. Section 21 is widely used only when there's a problem with a tenant, even though it's called a no-fault eviction. It will be replaced. There will be other what we call mandatory grounds. Mandatory grounds are important because it means that if the ground's made out, a judge has to give possession. And the landlord has to know that at the end of the process, that possession is attainable, because if it's not, then that changes everything and landlords will be exiting the sector en masse. So no Section 21. There will be other grounds and other reasons that you can serve notice. One will be that you wish to take the property as your primary or principal home. One will be that a family member wishes to move on, and one will be that you wish to sell. All these grounds will have to be made out, no doubt, with specific forms. We've yet to see the meat on the bone as far as that's concerned. They're reforming grounds of possession. This is what they're going on to say, to make sure that landlords have effective means to gain possession of their properties when necessary. We will expedite landlords' ability to evict those who disrupt neighbourhoods through antisocial behaviour and introduce new grounds for persistent arrears and the sale of the property. So, good news, we'll still be able to get rid of tenants that have persistent arrears. Two, tenants that disrupt neighbourhoods will be more easily evicted. That's the suggestion. The problem is that this requires court processes and investment in the courts that is not happening, and I don't suspect will happen. So I think what this will do is further complicate things and actually not cause any benefit in terms of getting rid of tenants that are disruptive, or indeed making it easier for landlords in any way. I think what they're basically doing there is trying to appease landlords that there's going to be these new grounds that they're going to be able to use, but they're still going to have to go through the courts. And I don't think it's going to make it any easier, because I don't see any significant investment in courts. There was some talk about specialist housing courts that would allow landlords to expedite these processes. That's what really needs to happen. The problem is that before that happens, I think what we'll see is a big exodus of landlords now, especially next week. Having heard this announcement, landlords have already been hit with huge interest increases over the last few months. And on top of that, we've got the EPC grade C required by 2028. And on top of that, we've got the Renters Reform Act. I think some people will see this as a straw that broke the camel's back. That's the problem. Why are the government doing this, you may ask yourself? Well, there are more tenants than landlords. So therefore, there's more voters that are tenants than landlords. Therefore, they're trying to win the vote of the tenants by giving them more power within that relationship. Now, I'm all for that in a way, as long as it's balanced and fair. They will only allow rent increases once a year. Well, any good landlords don't increase the rent more than once a year anyway. So that's not a big change. And they're saying they're going to improve tenants' ability to challenge excessive rent increases. Well, tenants already have that right. And they're saying they're going to improve it through first-tier tribunal processes. Well, that right's already there. So I'm not sure that that's anything really apart from hot air. Then we've got strengthened tenants' ability to hold their landlord to account. New ombudsman that all private landlords must join. Now, this is yet another scheme, and no doubt there'll be a cost attached to landlords for signing up to this scheme. This is on top to local licensing schemes by local authorities. Now, my view is when they bring this in, what they should have been doing was talking about removing local landlord licensing schemes, which double up this particular issue. They'll work with the Ministry of Justice and HM courts to target areas where there are unacceptable delays in court proceedings, strengthening the mediation on alternate dispute resolution to enable landlords and tenants to work together to reduce the risk of the issues escalating. Well, they did that over COVID, didn't they? It didn't make a jot of difference and did nothing in terms of speeding up processes from what I can see. And I don't suspect this will be any better for landlords anyway. There'll be a new property portal to make sure councils and landlords have information they need. Again, this is all about that signing up thing. No doubt there'll be a fee there for landlords to pay. Strengthen local councils' enforcement powers and ability to crack down on criminal landlords by seeking to increase investigative powers and strengthening the regime for fining for serious offences. Again, we're all for that sort of thing, but really, is it going to make any difference? We'll see. Make it illegal for landlords to have blanket bans on renting to families for children or those in receipt of benefits. So they're going to make sure that vulnerable groups are able to rent properties. We'll see how that manifests itself in the real world, because in the end, when landlords have got 50 tenants applying for one property, and it's only going to get worse with more landlords selling, then I'm not quite sure how you legislate for a landlord choosing to choose their own tenants. Then we'll give tenants the right to request a pet in their property, which a landlord can't reasonably refuse. That makes sense to me. And they'll work with industry experts for the development of market-led solutions to passport deposits. Read into that. We're struggling to think of anything to say, so we're going to work with people in order to make it better. Yeah, right. It sounds like it, doesn't it? So it's a lot. It's going to be a big change. It's going to take a year to get through Parliament after its announcement, at least. I wonder if it'll in fact be longer than that, because the cross-party committee that was looking into these changes said, hang on a minute, we're making these changes, we have to make it enforceable for landlords, and there has to be a way of expediting those possession proceedings. I'm not sure there's anything in there that is going to make those proceedings easily or more quickly go through the courts. What will be needed is investment in the courts, which governments traditionally have been awful at doing. So I don't think there'll be any real change there. So it's going to be a tough one for landlords, but it's going to be a tougher one for tenants. You might as well call it the anti-tenant legislation, and I'll tell you why. Because landlords already, with the EPCC requirement by 2028, now the Renters Reform Act, are going to be frightened. I think the bill is more balanced than it necessarily will show in the headlines that you'll see. And I don't think there's any need for landlords to actually panic. But I do think you're going to see landlords exiting the sector and taking this opportunity, given it's the spring, given large interest rate rises, given EPCC requirements, and given the Renters Reform Act coming through, as the point where they say, you know what, enough already, because the investment value now, particularly with the final straw that broke the camel's back, in my view, which was Section 24, the inability of landlords to offset tax, their interest payments against tax. Put all those things together, we've already got large portfolio landlords halving their portfolios or more in order to make sure that they don't own so many properties with finance on, so that they don't get caught out by this Section 24 rule, which basically means that the small landlord that's not a company does not have the same benefits and advantages as a larger landlord with a limited company. And for me, that's discrimination against a smaller landlord. And I think that was the government's intention originally, to squeeze out the smaller landlord. But I don't think they looked at the numbers and realized how many landlords in the UK are small landlords holding just one property. And that is going to be their problem next. We're going to see a huge flight from the system. This is going to push rents even further, make it even more difficult for tenants to move. And especially here in London, where we need those tenants in order that they can find employment, where we have plenty of employment, where are they going to go? Where are those tenants going to go? We're not building enough already. If you look at net migration, the figures are huge. That's growing all the time. On top of that, they said we'd need 300,000 home. The truth is, we need more like 500,000. We haven't even been building anywhere near the 300,000. So, you know, they say buy land, they're not making anymore. Well, buy houses and flats because they're not building anymore is the truth of it. And that will mean that rents will be pressed for, I think, the foreseeable future. And the rental crisis is something that will go on and on. We've got Labour now saying on the one hand they favour rent increase, on the other hand they don't. If you look at them, I don't think they've made a policy decision on this one yet. They're not sure whether they should or they shouldn't. Well, we've seen the Scottish model come in, and that hasn't been very successful over there. No doubt it will be just as bad over here or worse. So I don't think rent controls will come, but you never know. Never say never. Never thought we'd have the Section 24 either. But apart from that, the sales market is actually quite good. We've got first-time buyers coming back on board. Lots of offers around the 500,000 to 600,000 mark. Lots of buyers looking around. Of course, we expect it to be a little bit quieter over this weekend because of the coronation. Exciting, isn't it? And because of that, it will slow down because people will take that opportunity to go away and be with their families. But we do expect that we're going to be busy, not the week following, but the week after, because a lot of people tag holidays onto the end of bank holidays. So therefore, next week will be quite quiet as well. And then the week after, we'll start to see the traditional kind of late spring pickup that we always see, and we're looking forward to that. Today, I just have the one valuation. So if you are thinking of getting a valuation, you want to know what your rental property or your family home is worth, I'm available. Call me 0208 679 8601 or drop me an email, ken@jamesalexander.com. Thanks very much for watching. As always, look after yourselves and if you can, your family and friends. Ciao.